I'm Gary Wishnatzki, owner of Wish Farms. My family has been marketing berries for family farms since 1922. And since 1987, we've also been farming. As a fourth-generation family company, I'm proud of our family's legacy of producing strawberries and blueberries. I'm also co-founder of CROO Robotics, a startup to develop harvest technology. It is a collaborative effort with 8 other strawberry companies, both from Florida and California, have invested. I serve on the executive board of Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association, the board of the Produce Marketing Association, and I am a member of United Fresh Produce Association, as well as the Florida Strawberry Growers Association. As the chairman has acknowledged, specialty crop production is a pivotal and growing sector of agricultural industry. Toward that end, innovation and technology are essential for farmers to continue producing more food for our nation. In recent years, the industry, as well as others in the specialty crop sector, have been facing serious challenges. Most growers will agree that the availability of labor is the greatest of these challenges. I believe an impending crisis is at hand. Innovation can play a key role in solving this. The primary reason for the shrinking labor supply is simple demographics. The majority of farm workers come from other countries, particularly Mexico. In the 1960s, the fertility rate in Mexico was 6.7. People were coming here because there were no opportunities for them at home. 20 years ago, it had dropped to 2.9. That shrinking birth rate mirrors the declining labor force. The current fertility rate in Mexico is near 2.1. There are more opportunities for workers to stay in Mexico. The Pew Research Center published a paper in 2015 that concluded there are more people going back to Mexico than are coming to the U.S. Our workforce is shrinking and aging. According to a University of Florida economic study, the total cost of producing strawberries in Florida had risen 30% over a 5-year period ending in 2015. Labor costs were estimated at $8,400 per acre, while the cost of labor production for Mexican growers was a mere $3,800 per acre. The study concluded, quote, "These challenges are not likely to narrow down in the foreseeable future without a major technological breakthrough such as mechanization of strawberry harvesting." This study was based on industry costs from 2 seasons ago. Our farm's labor cost this past season was over $13,000 per acre. Many of the current Farm Bill programs provide the tools to enhance innovation and technology. However, there's a greater role for the private sector to play, and I encourage the adoption of policies that recognize and enhance private industry's involvement in vital research and Farm Bill programs. Currently in Florida, there is no private access to agricultural research funds. We will eventually harvest a significant portion of our nation's fruits and vegetables using automation, but depending on the crop, it may take between 5 and 10 years for technology to be perfected to the point that they can be utilized on a large scale. Until that time, our industry has to rely on foreign labor. The current federal guest worker program, H-2A, has serious problems. The program is in need of a major overhaul, and I believe there's a very simple way to fix it. To be clear, employers in our industry support enforcement of our nation's immigration policies, but those policies must reflect the reality of how vital a foreign-born workforce is to our nation's ability to ensure an abundant supply of fresh fruits and vegetables. Innovation will be the key to maintaining our nation's ability to feed itself, and this committee should fight for investments in technology and research for the specialty crop sector. Please consider, though, that automation is a long-range solution, and we still depend on foreign workers to bridge the gap. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Wishnatzki, you said that you think it's easy to fix the H-2A system. Please enlighten us.
I'm glad you asked me that question.
Well, I'm ready to take notes.
Yeah, please do, because I believe it could be a very simple fix if folks would get together and understand what growers need. We don't need indentured servants like H2A is now. It's akin to that. We need transportable visas that workers can move from grower to grower as needed. So, and I outlined it pretty clearly, very briefly in my written testimony, so you can read that. But the centerpiece to my idea of how simple it is if you tied a heavy withholding amount to these workers, when they came here and did agricultural work, they would not receive that back to them until they returned to their home country. To me, it's very simple. It's just, they're going to go back because you've got golden handcuffs on them. I just want to add, picking strawberries and many other harvesting jobs in agriculture, it's not a young person's game. And so we don't have the young people coming up in this country. We're not raising our children to become pickers. I mean, quite frankly, we're educating them. We've set up scholarship funds for our folks, and both in California and in Florida, we have scholarship funds. So our workers have access to education, higher education, and our workers' kids are not. Chances are they're not going to be strawberry pickers. So where are these people going to come from if we don't have some sort of means to have guest workers? It's a viable system for the industry.
Give us a look into the future and explain how the differentiation, how we can make this happen.
Sure.
How do we get them to pick those peaches without squeezing them to death? Go ahead.
Well, it's a great time in history right now. We're kind of at this crux here where there's this tremendous need for automation, and at the same time, the technology is coming of age that we can do this. I want to qualify what I'm saying by I'm not the engineer in this company. I tell people in Harvest CROO Robotics, I'm simply some of the funding and the inspiration behind it, but I do know enough to be maybe dangerous. But the one thing about the technology that's changed dramatically, just in the last 5 years, is the processing power of computer chips. We are doing things on little small NVIDIA chips that would have taken massive computers not too long ago. The stereo vision that we're using to identify and go down and pick the fruit at the exact point where it is on the ground, that technology just didn't exist until very recently. So we're processing something like 30 gigabytes of data a second. And we're processing these images in 10 milliseconds, 10 one-thousandths of a second. So we're able now to identify the fruit. We have a system with these soft claws that are on this picking wheel that my co-founder developed and we've patented. That is what's allowing us to get to commercial speed, and it's allowing us to travel around the plant, inspect it very quickly, and go down, dive down, and pick the fruit. So it's some groundbreaking stuff. On our website, we've got some information about it if you go to that, and some videos also that show how it actually works.
And so if we just took one like blueberries, give us a picture of how that would look in the blueberry field. What would that robot look like? And secondly, at some point, the human quotient has to come in there. I mean, you pick them, you got to get them up, you got to put them in something, you got to transport. Where does that start? Where does it end? And where does the human quotient come in?
Sure, those are good questions because, we're focused on harvesting of strawberries right now, but I know blueberries will be in our future.
Well, let's use strawberries, yeah.
Okay, strawberries is an example. Well, one of the things my co-founder, Bob Pitzer, has mentioned is, there's a couple problems here. You've got to be able to find them and pick them, but you've also got to be able to transport them out of the field. So you need a vehicle that these robots are mounted underneath that's of enough size and mass that you can actually actually put the finished product on and stack it until you get out to the ends of the rows. And when we do have that, we've developing it, and we've got the autonomous system on it now. It's driving using GPS and collision avoidance using LiDAR technology. So this is just a big platform that has 16 robotic picking heads mounted underneath it as this swarm of robots that'll be traveling through the fields, picking the berries, and then dropping them off at the end of the rows. We don't have a, our plan is not to utilize human labor to pack it either. There would be a secondary inspection of the fruit that would actually, after the berries were picked, they would be inspected by another set of cameras that would then actually have robotic fingers that would put it into clamshells, or probably maybe not clamshells, but a consumer unit, and that will be transported to the end of the field.
Thank you.
It's my understanding that CRISPR-Cas9 is not a requirement to be even labeled as a GMO currently. And the reason for that, they're taking genes, and Mr. Levin can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they're taking genes from within the same species. In other words, we're not taking a fish gene and putting it in a strawberry or a tomato. They're developing varieties, and I prefer to call it smart hybridization, because hybridization has been around for many years, and that's how we cross everything, but it's all just trial and error. But with this smart hybridization, you're able to get a variety that's close, but maybe it's got one little defect of susceptibility to a disease. So they can snip that bad gene out, put in a good gene from another, say if we're talking about strawberries, so it's within the same species. You're not taking something else.
But I'm also very optimistic about you talking about the mechanization and the robotics. Do you feel like that's something that should be industry-driven, the entrepreneur, the innovator out there, and not wait on a federal government program?
Absolutely. I mean, the effort I've undertaken has been highly collaborative. I went to a number of competitors that have invested money in this, so I mean, that speaks to the need. University systems are doing a wonderful job for us in research into pest issues, disease issues, but there's also there needs to be some money, I think, set aside for the private sector, that especially in collaborative efforts like the one we undertook. But there's this mechanization is kind of the last frontier in agriculture, because for years there's been ways to harvest crops, destructive ways where you pick them once and you're done. But many of these crops that we're trying to mechanize now are selective in nature, so you have to come back again and again.
I think we'll get there, and I think you guys leading the charge in the industry is what's really going to be the catalyst for that.
My first question is for how are the crop insurance tools to help with these highs and lows of if you miss that 3-4 week window?
Yeah, quite frankly, we're not using crop insurance in strawberries because I don't believe there's anything specific to strawberries, to the best of my knowledge. The whole farm insurance maybe is something that we're beginning to look at, but I don't believe any of our associated growers are utilizing that program right now either.
What about for blueberries?
And blueberries, the same thing.
Do you think it would benefit, since we have such a highs and lows, depending if you hit that window, if you all had better access to crop insurance?
Oh, absolutely. If there was a means to help level out some of those dips, because quite frankly, Florida strawberries over the last 5 years had been very challenged because of several issues, related to competition and related to labor availability. So.
And I wanted to go into labor. If we had a revised farm worker, guest worker program where it was a 3-year or 5-year term rather than a 1-year, that would only be revoked if that individual committed a crime and they'd have to go back each season, would that be a benefit to the industry?
Oh, absolutely. If there was a means to keep folks here, I mean, in Florida, the work goes on, into the summer. It doesn't. There's usually a few slower months, so they would probably find other work in other neighboring states. But having the availability of labor and having them there would be a great benefit. And I'm not sure that that's, possible with, getting that through, but it would be a benefit if it was.
Anything's possible with an act of Congress, sir. I wanted to finish by talking about, a lot of our specialty crops have faced stiff competition by other countries that have far lower costs. So how key is the specialty crop block grant and other programs in addressing trade inequities?
Yeah, it's vital. I mean, we need to fund our land grant universities with these funds, because there's so many problems with pests, diseases that come about that we really depend on that resource. So in no way, shape, or form would I advocate that funds be taken from that to go to something else. I mean, automation is important as well, and I think there needs to be additional funds made available for that.
What are some of the specific examples of the ways your industry has benefited from SCRI?
Dr. Jack Rexsiegel, who's the head of the Gulf Coast Research Center, he made me aware of a program that's actually, it's a multi-state interdisciplinary project on tomatoes, which is not my area of specialty, but I had asked him prior to coming here about giving me some examples of just what you're asking. And that project actually brings together 13 researchers from 6 different universities representing 5 states, working towards a common goal to improve the tomato health with xanthomonas is actually what they're trying to solve. So, yeah, there are, I think there's many more examples
Sure.
of that.
Well, that was a great example.
We all want safe food, but we also want regulations that make sense and you can live with. What's been your you've been working with them directly. What's been your experience?
Yeah, my experience, I mean, so far, I mean, I'm on the board of Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association, and they, had a representative came and spoke with the board, and I get the impression that they're are doing a lot with outreach and trying to, identify the pain points and what things are wrong. So, from my perspective, I believe they're doing a pretty good job. It's a big undertaking.